welcome back to another video. This is like the 50th part 1 I'm doing of this. I tried to record this on my phone, but the audio was all messed up, so we're going to see if the computer app I just got will do it right for me. And now you can see what I'm reading, so now you'll be able to correct me on all the mistakes I make. Sounds fun. Alright, we're reading fan fiction called Corrupt. It's a Kaya Chisaki X Reader fanfiction. Chapter 1 / Part 1, Amber Eyes, by Kikyo851. Please correct me in the comments. I want to give credit to this person because they're a really good writer and I'm loving their story, the 2 pages that I've read of the 189 pages. You're gonna get at least 80 parts of me reading this, so strap in, boys and gals. This is gonna be a ride. And non-binary pals, that's copyrighted. Is it copyrighted? Never mind. Let's get started. Get off your phone, for fuck's sake. You've been on it all night. Make me, loser. You sighed warily, watching as your best friend sucker punched on her on-again, off-again boyfriend, right in the jaw. He'd apparently been ignoring her and glued to the screen of his smartphone, and they'd been bickering ever since you left his apartment. You weren't a stranger to these types of silly arguments, but you really wished they would give it a break. School had been rough lately, and you kinda just wanted to get shit-faced at the club. Guys, you cut in, having to force yourself in between your friends to break them apart. Can't we just have one night where you two don't fight for no reason? Come on, don't ruin your evening over something like this. Luna stared back at you, her cherry lips twisted into a pout. Her hands were twitching at the sides, no doubt yearning to yank Raikou by the collar of his shirt and rip him a new one. Truthfully, you wondered why they even kept getting back together. Even though you'd known them both for years, they were your closest friends to date. They were at each other's throats so often that you didn't understand the appeal. Well, maybe since it'd been a while since your last relationship. You heard your name. Luna ran a hand through her tousled black locks, sticking her tongue out at Raikou. She said no fights tonight, so give me your damn phone before I knee you in the balls. The silver-haired boy let out a groan. You're still gonna carry on with this shit? There's no way in hell I'm giving you my phone, you female gorilla. You'll crush it with your meaty hands. Fuck you, shithead. Yeah, fuck you too. The heck are you even worried about? Anyways, I'm sure you think I'm probably texting some chick. Because you are texting some chick. You rolled your eyes, not even willing to exert the effort anymore. You really did think they'd just be better off as friends. Or maybe even that was a stretch. A few more minutes of pointless bickering, and you'd arrive at one of the more popular clubs in the area. You were fortunate enough that there wasn't too long of a wait time. You paid your cover, pulled down the short, insert dress, that was riding up your butt, and thanked your lucky stars for the loud music that drowned out the sounds of Luna and Raikou screaming at each other. It's pretty busy, you remarked, to no one really in particular. You had to tug Luna forward by the arm and lead her in the direction of the bar. As things were, she could use a drink. All of you could, really. You ordered your favorite cocktail, flashed the bartender a shy smile, because he was pretty cute, and mentally cursed yourself for spending so much money on trashy liquor. Ah, well, not like it could be helped. You were only human after all, and certainly alcohol. You moved away from the dance floor, spying an open table where the 3 of you could sit down and have your drinks. You'd only gotten about 5 steps in before you realized Luna and Raikou weren't even following you. They'd stayed behind at the bar. Raikou had his arms wrapped around the girl's waist, and she was already tonguing her brain out. You sighed loudly. Well, that was quick. Grumbling to yourself, you took a seat and began sipping at your cocktail. You liked dancing, for the most part, but you preferred to have a little buzz going before you could really let loose and not feel too timid about what you were doing. You took a tentative sip at your drink, nose immediately scrunching up in response. It was way too sweet. But you decided you'd forgive the bartender this time around on account of how good looking he was. Actually, no, scratch that. His good looks weren't going to keep your drink from tasting like shit. By this point, you'd lost sight of your two companions, so you figured they'd abandon you to rush onto the dance floor and grind against one another. You'd known them long enough that you weren't surprised and didn't really mind. But it would have been nice to come with a larger group this time, so you weren't left sitting all alone. The music was painfully loud, as was usually the case in a club, but they were playing some of the songs you liked, so you couldn't help but move your shoulders to the beat while sipping at your drink. Since you weren't really doing much else, you figured you'd take a moment to survey the crowd, see what type of people had come out tonight. You spotted a group of girls twerking. Much to your dismay, two guys that were having some sort of loud disagreement, a ton of people that were so drunk that they were spilling their liquor everywhere, and also a man with a dark, short-cropped hair and a piercing amber gaze. What had stood out to you was mostly the fact that he was sitting all alone at a table, just like you were, and wore a black dust mask across his mouth. Unlike you, however, he didn't have a single glass in his hand. As it were, there was nothing at his table, and after studying him for a few moments, you realized he was also wearing thin, white gloves. It definitely wasn't cold inside, what with all the bodies sweating around, so you could only assume he's the type to recoil from germs. In that case, the mask made sense too. He also had 3 piercings on his left ear, but upon noting this, you realized you'd been staring at him for far longer than you initially intended, which wasn't all that bad in and of itself, but he apparently noticed and was now staring right back at you. Instinctively, you snapped your head down and took an obnoxiously large gulp of your drink. It still tasted like shit, but you just wanted something to distract you right now. For some reason, his lidded amber eyes made you feel uneasy. Your name. Come dance with us. Out of nowhere, you felt a hand tug you by the wrist. Luna was grinning down at you, cheeks flustered and chest heaving. The silver-haired boy was hovering behind her, looking just as blotchy-faced and warm. You'd been right in assuming that they were going at each other hardcore. You took a final swig of your drink and smiled before hurriedly nodding your head. Though you were feeling a bit anxious, you couldn't help but spare another glance at the masked male seated at the table. As expected, he was still staring at you. "Let's dance," you stammered out awkwardly, linking arms with Luna and scrambling to get to the floor. She laughed softly, amused by your little stumble, but indulged you nonetheless. You were thankful to get away from those piercing golden eyes that were boring right into your very soul. You weren't sure exactly how much time had passed, but you were definitely buzzed, so much so that you were starting to feel nauseous, actually. "I need to go out and get some air," you groaned, earning a spirited nod from Raikou as he playfully smacked Luna's bottom. She squealed and giggled. You merely groaned again. You still had the stamp on your hand, which meant you were free to leave the club and enter back inside pretty much whenever. You doubted you'd be spending too much time outside, though. A young girl roaming around the streets at night was never a good idea. The cool air hit your skin, making you let out a contented sigh. You could get a glass of water when you went back inside, but already the fresh air was doing wonders for your nausea. A minute or two longer, and you'd practically be good as new. You pulled down your dress again. The damn thing kept riding up and tucked in your cleavage to the best of your ability. It wasn't like you to wear something so revealing, but then again, you'd been feeling lonely as of late. Perhaps you'd been hoping for someone to hit on you, even if it was just some trashy guy at the club. Speaking of, nice, a man whistled, blowing out a ring of smoke while oogling you shamelessly. A big group of them were hanging around just outside the club, though you hadn't realized there would be so many. "Where are your friends at?" he slurred, making no effort to hide how hammered he was. "Left ya? Be careful what you wish for, they always say." "They're waiting for me back inside," you answered politely. "I just stepped out for a bit to get some fresh air." That's a killer dress, you know. You've got a fucking crazy bod." "Thank you." Cue your mark to leave. Some of his friends had begun leering at you while making obscene gestures with their hands. You weren't really all that shocked, given how inebriated they were, but things could get messy if you hung around here any longer. "They must be pretty boring people if they let a cutie like you go off on your own." The man flicked his cigarette off to the side, stomping down on it to extinguish the lit end. He smiled mercilessly as he took a step forward. "You want to party with us instead?" You didn't quite have a chance to respond. A man had stepped in front of you, and you immediately recognized him from the black mask he wore, and those same amber eyes. He didn't make any motion to touch the other man. Rather, he seemed to be maintaining a fair distance in between them. Nonetheless, his height and build far outmatched the other drunkards. And the black suit he wore led you to believe he was someone with authority. "She was just waiting for me before heading inside." The masked male spoke, his voice deep and husky. "If you don't mind, I'll have you leave now. You're making her uncomfortable." "Huh?" The drunken man rubbed at his eyes, having to blink a few times from the confusion. Eventually, he let out a sigh, probably realizing you weren't worth the effort. He looked like he was just shy of passing out anyway. The group shuttled off to the side, no doubt having been put off by the other man's sudden appearance. It seemed as though the only thing that would deter a man on the prowl really was another man. Perhaps you could have ignored them and started heading back inside, but you appreciated the intervention nonetheless. "Thank you." For that, you smiled up at the masked male who towered above you. "I appreciate it." After a moment of hesitation, "Chisaki," he said simply, eyes still on your frame. "Though you have nothing to thank me for, I simply loathe watching scum like them." But still, it was nice of you to intervene. It made me feel safe." "I'm your name, by the way." You'd outstretched your hand to shake his own, but he frowned. You even thought he'd taken a step back. Embarrassed, you dropped your hand to your side. Perhaps he really was afraid of germs. "It was nice meeting you. Your name?" Your name hung on Chisaki's lips for longer than you'd expected, and for some reason it made your chest quiver slightly. He'd already turned to leave, heading towards the darkened alleyway behind the club. You wondered if he'd really come out here on his own, since it didn't look like he'd been drinking, and if not, you wondered who he'd come out here to meet. It was getting cold now. You hastily shook your head, rushing back towards the club's entrance. For some reason, even though Chisaki had already left, you still felt his amber eyes following you. Here is the author. If any of you can tell me how to pronounce her name, that would be very kind. This is part 1. I'm going to try to do more, but if it doesn't happen, don't be surprised. I give up on everything I do. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and, goodbye.